All right. I believe Dave Landis from Colorado is going to show us something about their sound setup. So if we got Dave, if we
Yeah.
can bring him, let's do it.
You got to find him, spotlight him. There he is.
Yeah. So I've shared here. I'll show you. This is our meeting location. We are in. Well, I'm Dave. I'm with Rocky Mountain Woodturners, Loveland, Colorado. We meet in the back of a Woodcraft store. So it's a warehouse, and they clear out half the warehouse for us. There's a row of shelves over on the right that is on the other half of the warehouse, and there's still people shopping while we're having our meeting. We usually get about 60 or so at the, physically present these days, and maybe 20, 25 online on a given meeting. You can see up front, there's a video monitor. It's on the back of a cabinet that I'll show you in a little bit, and there's a speaker on top of that. Our demonstrator way up here. We got a guy running a camera. We've got a fixed camera overhead and a couple other cameras sitting around that you'll see in a second. Kind of view from the front. There is a camera on a mic stand. This is kind of our front view to show the front of the demonstrator, and that usually just sits right behind the front row of seats or something. It's on a thin stand, so it's really out of the way. If you look over to the right, there's a camera on a tripod that is usually used for our instant gallery, but it kind of is mobile. So, if the demonstrator is doing some embellishment or something on a table and we need to get that over there, we can do that. Our demonstrator has a camera overhead. This is fixed. We don't yet have remote zoom or anything on this camera. So we just set up with the demonstrator and say, hey, what are you showing? What's your, where are you working? And we get that camera set up ahead of time. It's on a stand for a light, for like a camera, a studio light that gets it up out of the way. And we usually have one operator on a camera next to the tailstock so that we kind of have things that can move around. Way over to the right is our cabinet where everything lives, and somebody operating Zoom and the bit focus companion for the ATEM Mini and whatever else is going on. So this is what's in our cabinet. This used to be our DVD and book library cabinet, but nobody ever checked out DVDs or paper books anymore. So those are all in a bin in our librarian's house. We've got where the DVDs used to go. We pulled out the shelves, and all of the tripods go in one door, and all of the cables for the cameras and extension cords hang in the other door. And then in here, we got all our stuff. We've got a laptop that runs Zoom and BitFocus Companion. BitFocus Companion is software that emulates a Stream Deck and will control tons of stuff, including an ATEM Mini. I actually use it in my shop with vMix, and it's great. When we've got a guy here running this camera and somebody else running the gear. When I'm the operator, I'm usually doing both of those. I'm running the camera, and I've got my cell phone in my hand with BitFocus Companion running, and I can control all the cameras from there. So I don't have to actually stand over here where Terry is. So that's helpful. And then we just need one other guy to run the fourth camera that's behind me where I was standing just then.
So all of that gear is like wired into the box there and permanently.
It's all wired into the box. I've got some diagrams a little later that'll make that a lot clearer. But we've got the laptop, we've got an ATEM Mini, audio mixer, This monitor is the second monitor for the laptop. And so it is showing it's the Zoom screen. So it's showing what Zoom is seeing, but it's also on a splitter. So it's showing exactly what the monitor on the other side of the big monitor for the audience is seeing. So one of the things that was important to me setting this up is that what people on Zoom are seeing is exactly what everybody in the audience is seeing. So we don't have any second-class citizens one way or the other.
I love the way you've set that up into that module like that, which is exactly what we're talking about doing for our club. Can you address the audio portion of this a bit?
Okay, so the audio portion, there's a mixer. I'll get into detail of how that's hooked up. There's a mixer down here. And then on this shelf, we have a receiver for the headset that the demonstrator is wearing and a 2-channel receiver for handheld mics that we walk around the room. We got a new set of handheld mics a couple of months ago that work really good. Our previous set was like Mr. Microphone quality, which was pretty bad. So we don't really have any audio problem. Our main audio problem is convincing our attendees that they should wait for somebody to bring them a mic before they start talking. Because the people in Cheyenne or California or Denver or wherever our members are all over can't hear them unless they have a mic. So we're still doing a little social engineering on that.
Do you have a PA system in the room?
Yeah, so there is, well, the PA system is the speaker sitting on top of this cabinet. So there is nothing, we have nothing permanent in this space. It is a warehouse for Woodcraft, and they are nice enough to just move all their stuff out of the way when we have a meeting night.
No, what sound comes into that PA system though? Where does it?
I'll get to that in just a second. I got a drawing that makes that easier to talk about. So really the only other thing in here is on the top shelf, there's a bag where we store all our cameras and stuff, and a spare laptop just in case. The laptop is nothing special because it only has to do Zoom. It's, you know, some 10-year-old thing we had donated. So that's really great. Before we had this cabinet, I just Velcroed everything to a chunk of plywood with some 2x4 legs on it. And it was roughly equivalent. That is, you plug it in to power and you got to hook up the cameras and some extension cords, and you're pretty well ready to go. So
did you have any kind of a wiring harness on that as well?
It was just all Velcro and zip ties underneath that plywood. So it was really crude, and it was intended to be temporary to kind of help us figure out, you know, we used it for like 2 or 3 meetings. And the idea was, well, let's simplify the hookup, but let's figure out that this is the gear we want before we start trying to fit it into a cabinet that suddenly we need to redo. So it kind of helped us kind of zero in on our config and our setup and everything.
So out of curiosity, what changed during that process to
let's see what changed. We added an HDMI recorder. We changed the laptop because this one wouldn't fit. We had like 4 laptops donated to us. They were all kind of in that 10-year-old era. This laptop was too big to fit in the cabinet that we ended up using. So we swapped it out with one that did fit. I've reconfigured some of the audio, and we've got rid of this. This was our handheld mic receiver, pile system, and one of our club members donated a brand new set of Sennheiser mics that actually work. And so we tossed this in favor of the others, but most of the rest of it is pretty much how I set it up over the course of months and months in my basement. So
does the audio mixer have an audio interface to the PC?
It does not. It's just a standard mixer. Let me jump down to that because, boy, that's what everybody's interested in. So it is a Mackie a 4-channel mixer. And the way we hook it up is we've got a demonstrator headset receiver. It's a Shure system and our Sennheisers. So we have 3 microphone channels, 1 from the demonstrator and 2 from our handhelds that float around the room. And those go into the 3 main channels of this mixer. So all the mics go into the mixer. It's just a regular audio mixer with volume control knobs. First time I set up audio, I tried to do it in the ATEM because the ATEM has an audio mixer in it, but I found it was very inconvenient, especially for somebody that wasn't really somebody that I wanted to help me, but was not really keen on doing everything in a computer. They can turn a knob, that people can figure out. So I thought that's turned out to be really valuable. It's like, you need more volume, turn the knob.
With the ATEM, you never know where you are. I mean, you've got volume buttons, but you can't tell where you are in the range.
You can't tell anything. Yeah, it's kind of challenging, and there's a bunch of screens you have to switch around. And if you're trying to do that and video and Zoom and everything all at once, it was just way too much load on everybody. So this is great. We already had this mixer. And so it turned out pretty good. So anyway, the 3 mic channels go in. All 3 of those go in as mono. So they end up in both the left and the right channel in the mixer. And so I take advantage of that and kind of use the mixer as a splitter. One of the left-right channels out of the mixer goes to our PA speaker. So that means all the mics, everything that goes into the mixer goes out to the audience.
Does that PA speaker a powered speaker with an amplifier?
It's a powered amplified speaker.
Yeah.
And it has its own volume control up there on top. The other channel, so like left, I don't remember which one, left or right, doesn't really matter. I send back into the ATEM. So what this does is this lets all 3 of those mics, as they're mixed in, go out of here, back into the ATEM, where then, of course, it comes back out on the USB to go into Zoom as a mic on the webcam. Very nice. So the output of the mixer, again, we don't have any second-class citizens because everything that the audience hears off this big speaker is the same thing that goes into the ATEM, which is what Zoom people hear.
Do you have to change the mixer settings during the course of a meeting?
Usually not. We kind of figured out, and I have marked on our mixer with little tick marks where kind of nominal volume levels are. So long as those are set, all you really have to do is maybe tweak. Like I know next month our demonstrator has a very soft voice. And so they may have to turn up his mic a little more than they normally would. But we kind of have everything set by experimentation. We found all the nominal levels for things. And I marked them on the mixer. So if they get messed up, somebody can go put them back at the marks and have a good starting point.
We've got a gallery view up here, and let's see if there's more questions about audio since this slide is up.
I have a question.
Go for it, Bill.
Thank you. I was researching the ATEM Mini for our club, the Atlantic Shore Woodturners in New Jersey, and I watched a bunch of YouTube reviews on it. And one of the things that I found was that they said, if you're using the audio line input, the audio is in real time. However, HDMI video is slightly delayed. So the two don't sync up. So on the reviews that I saw, they were saying you should run your mic through the camera or one of the cameras, the audio input, so it's coming in as HDMI audio, so the two are in sync. Have you had any problems with syncing your audio?
We have not. We've not heard anybody mention anything, and we've got video. You can watch if you search YouTube for Rocky Mountain Woodturners, last month's demonstrator, Pat Scott did Pepper Mills, and that's publicly available.
Okay.
So you guys can see what our demonstrations look like.
Yeah, I don't believe we've had that problem either. And we have used the mics on the cameras which sometimes are convenient. I saw we had another question, but maybe it just went away. Someone put their hand down. Oh,
I'm going to
Let
go
me,
back
let
to
me
gallery. Anybody
finish
else?
with this real quick to get through
Jared,
this.
I guess, has a hand up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to comment. So we just recently had, hi, I'm Jared Hawkins. I'm with stows in Calgary. And we just recently had our first live attendee meeting in April, where we had about 25 live in-person audience, as well as about 25 on our Zoom call. And it was the first time I had to wrangle this whole audio out to the PA so that our audience could hear what our Zoom call was hearing. So we actually rented a mixer from an outfit here in Calgary to allow us to do that. And it was it basically pushed me towards the direction of where we're going with our audio interface, and that's that Mackie has a mixer board that's slightly higher end than this, that has an audio interface already in it, and it sort of skirts all of the issues with having to plug into the headphone jack and use the ATEM as your audio in. So you basically don't even use the ATEM at all for audio. You're just using an audio interface from your mixer. Another nice thing on some of the higher end mixers, especially with Mackie, is that they have mute on all of the actual sources. So you could have your mic set to whatever you want it to be at for all your individual mics, and just mute it when it's not being used, so that there's no chance that there being feedback or someone crossing across some issue. You know, you have more control right at the actual interface, and I think that's the direction we're headed. Obviously, there's more than one way to skin the cat.
Jared, I'm going to stop you there and ask you to come back to next week. Come back with some pictures and show us your setup, because that's we need to see it. We're kind of we need to see pictures to understand.
Yeah,
I understand what Jared is saying. Then the output of that mixer then just goes into the PC, so that Zoom sees that as the one microphone that Zoom is using. Is that correct?
Exactly, and that same interface is bidirectional, so you can have that as the output to the mixer, and you have your own like Zoom participants audio, you know, so that you can play the Zoom participants asking questions over your PA system.
All right, as John said, if you could bring a picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I've got a partially built slide here to show, but it doesn't have.
No, don't bring it up now. We're gonna stay with go back to Dave now.
Yeah.
We have one more question here from Derek.
Yeah, go for it, Derek.
Yeah, I was concerned about what was just being discussed, as well as the diagram that we're seeing in terms of getting the sound into the computer. And so in the diagram that we're looking at, USB video and sound processed through the ATEM are coming in together. Is that right?
Yes.
But with the, go ahead.
Yeah, so everything that comes into the ATEM, which for us, the only thing we have turned on is this one audio input from the mixer. But yeah, that goes on the USB into Zoom as a webcam microphone, essentially. The other half of that we do is the headphone output from the laptop, which is Zoom's speaker, if you will. We send into the tape input of the mixer. Now, the reason it's going into the tape input is because we already had this mixer, and I didn't want to buy another one if I didn't have to. If I'd have bought another one, it would have more channels and probably have the USB interface and all the cool new things. But we already had this guy. So anyway, the headphone out from the laptop goes back into the mixer, which of course means it goes to the main PA speaker. So anything that happens on Zoom, so if someone has a question, or if one of our officers is remote and needs to give a report, we can hear all the Zoom people in the room. Of course, it also goes back into the ATEM and then goes back on USB and back into Zoom. But Zoom's noise canceling, echo canceling is handling that, just like it does the microphone and speaker in my laptop right now. I don't get echoes from you guys because Zoom is taking care of that echo cancellation. And so this seems to work just fine for us. If we had a lot of latency in something, a lot of delay, then it would be a problem. But there's not enough delay in this that at least it works. The other advantage we get is if someone on Zoom asks a question during the demonstration, because it makes it back into the ATEM, it comes out of the ATEM's HDMI, which is where we have our recorder for recording the demo. So we actually get to record any Zoom questions or whatever that happen on our HDMI recorder when we're recording the demo.
Thank you.
That's great. Can you move on to whatever else you might have here?
Yeah, so this diagram has all of that audio stuff, plus kind of how we hooked up the video bits. And the advantage of having, I mean, this I've got documented and it's sitting in a notebook in the cabinet. You know, in case somebody needs to take the laptop home and they come back and it's, you know, to do updates or something, and they come back and like, oh, now what do I plug in? Where? So, you know, this is all documented for everybody. This is what we set up when we get to a meeting. It takes, if it's me and an assistant, it's about 45 minutes to get everything set up. That includes hauling the cabinet from the back of the room up to the front. We got 4 cameras on tripods and mic stands. All of our HDMI cables are bundled with extension cords. They just plug into a panel on the side of we've got a panel and a power strip on the side of the cabinet. So it's really just plugging everything in and running cables. And so it's really relatively simple to get everything set up. And then we need between 2 and 3 people. Let me get back to this picture. We need between 2 and 3 people to kind of run the thing and run 1 or 2 of the cameras. Sometimes one of the cameras can be fixed. Sometimes it needs to kind of move around. So, you know, that's kind of our during the demo and meeting operation.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That really is a comprehensive look. And yeah, I think if we get down to the centerpiece like you, our time is going to cut to a similar sort of setup time, which makes a lot of sense to me. Were there any questions for Dave before we move on?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
Use raise hand if you can. Any questions in the room? I got a gallery view here. I can see you if you just wave your arm too.
I will send this is all in a PDF. I'll send this, John, to you and you can.
I'll circulate it to the list. Yeah.
And I'll kill this share so I can see everybody too.
Yeah, we're all back to gallery view now.
I guess I put my hand up in the wrong time here, but I was just asking about, I wanted to ask about the extenders that you're using for HDMI. Do you have any issues with those?
A little bit. So part of this document, I do have an inventory. So, and a couple of links for a few things. So if you're curious about any particular piece of equipment, what I found, we've got 25-foot HDMI cables from the cabinet to our cameras. And then inside the cabinet, there's about 6 foot of HDMI to get everything hooked around. And I did have to experiment quite a bit. The ATEM Mini input 1 is different than the other 3. Input 1 is sensitive, and our cameras, they're all Canon. Are they Canon? Yeah, cameras. They can drive that input 1, but they can't drive the other 3 inputs with those 25-foot cables. And I did have to experiment with the extenders, getting them in the right place. You know, should they be up by the camera, or should they be, you know, in the cabinet next to the ATEM Mini? And so I kind of had to experiment with a lot of things. And unfortunately, a failed experiment was mostly an intermittent camera signal that would just kind of blip every once in a while. So it meant setting everything up and turning on a bunch of cameras and just sitting there and watching it to see what would happen for a while.
That is interesting. We've had a similar problem with cables, and I've never heard that the ATM input 1 is different. So that's helpful.
It's the one that
It seems to be
feeds picture in
stronger
picture.
somehow.
It feeds picture in picture is what it is, and
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how it works, but yeah.
Well,
All right, I
I
think
will
we're gonna
point
need
out,
to-
we are using BitFocus Companion software, which, like I said, has a Stream Deck emulator in it, but it also has some pretty powerful interfaces to the ATEM. I can get picture in picture in any of the 4 corners, bigger than the standard ATEM Mini picture in picture with any camera in the picture in picture.
Hmm.
I can't
Yeah,
do that from the buttons on the ATEM Mini, but I can do it with the ATEM Mini software controlled from BitFocus Companion.
We
Yeah, we do that as well. I got a question about the cables. How many cables between the ATEM and your camera?
So we have between
Just
the
from
ATEM,
one
there's-
camera to the ATEM, how many cables?
So on camera 1, there's 2 cables. There's a
Okay.
25-foot cable that plugs into the panel on the box, on the console, and then about a 3-foot cable inside the unit. And
Okay,
there's a
that's my
standard
answer my
HDMI
question.
cable.
Yeah, that
The
answers my
other 3
question.
have, of course, 2 little cables inside to get the extenders plugged in.
Yes,
All right, I
and
think
that
we should move on at this point. And thank you, Dave. That was very
You're
helpful.
very welcome.